Today, one of the things I wanted to talk about and try to share some information that might be useful is about using the IWATA airbrush that I've used for many, many years. Now, I might have alluded to it. I'm sure I alluded to it several times in the past, and I'll go over it again on this video, what some of the advantages of using an airbrush instead of a spray gun might be on certain things. And I'll give some good examples. So if you're interested in using an airbrush or learning maybe what will be some useful spray tips, I'll try to include what I know on this video. Now, everybody that watches these videos, and we're over 5,000 subscribers already, so I got a picture, somebody that's bored silly and they're watching me restore motorcycles. I've restored motorcycles for over 50 years, and in my own way, it's kept me from having any interest in anything else, much else, except maybe model airplanes. But anyway, I do love restoring motorcycles. I have restored them for over 50 years. I've done, within my skill set, paint work, modifications, some small engine work, but one of the skills that I really have enjoyed sharing is using paint to my advantage. Now, any of my friends from modeling, and going back over 30 or 40 years in modeling, know that I made over 1,000 videos, and most of them cover how to paint and how to use things that are relating to model airplanes. But most of those techniques are usable on other things. And one of the things they're useful for, crossover technology, is painting motorcycles. Now, you might have heard me say, every time I use an airbrush, I always say, oh, or it's on several of the videos anyway, oh, I remember 20 years ago, a guy came to my house and gave me a bunch of airbrush stuff and some spray guns and stuff from IWATA, and I could never remember his name. I don't know why, probably because I'm old, but luckily John Pothier did the legwork and went back through all the old videos and got the gentleman's name, and his name is Will Nomura. So Will, this is dedicated to you, and I'm sorry I forgot your name, but I didn't forget that you were generous years ago and that you came to my house. And God, I wish I could remember what year it was. Maybe I'll try to get in touch with you by email or some way. But I've used that airbrush ever since. I used it yesterday to paint the mirrors. And one of the things, I've used it on this motorcycle to do the wheels. And by the way, these are all on my channel on previous videos, the wheels. And I want to explain why I used an airbrush to paint the wheels. Now, whenever you paint anything with a spray gun, no matter how good you are or how careful you are, the paint is never the same as a flat, sanded, buffed out finish. The smoother you can make the color paint, in this case it's the green, if you can get this paint to lay down flat, it's just less work sanding and less work buffing. So the objective of an airbrush is to get a beautiful coat to lay down flat. And that's the objective that we've always had. Now, I made the seat. This is not a factory part here. This is actually, people, whenever I want to shock somebody, I say, they think it's a factory part. Oh, yeah, no, you bought that on the internet. And I take it off, and it's wood. It actually blows people away. Now, for a modeler to carve that piece of wood and put the fiberglass finish on it and put that buffed out finish, it's not a big deal. A lot of motorcyclists are challenged by that. But here's my point. When we were doing the wheels, it's a really detailed thing to detail, sand these out and get the gold to lay down, and then to flake, and then to clear, and then to buff them. It's so labor intensive. The airbrush minimizes that. It doesn't eliminate it, it minimizes it because the color paint lays down flatter. Now, if you're new to Windy videos here, there are going to be 1,500 of them soon. If you just rub your finger on that, you can see that's hand buffed, airbrushed, and you can see the video in its entirety, of course. But that technology of getting that paint to lay down flat so that you can buff it out, in this case by hand, That's something we've shown over and over and over on our video channel. And the channel is Windy Space U, the letter U. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if Will has any interest in motorcycles. I know he's interested in modeling. And so I'm going to take a few minutes today and lay out what I think are some of the good things that you can use and you can do with an airbrush. And we really had a really nice ride up to Hibernia on the R1 yesterday, and I've been just waiting for summer to come. The FZR restoration ran a month overtime because we crashed the bike. That was a 7-month restoration, and we're looking forward to a summer of riding and wearing out tires. So I thought I'd mention this. I'm up in the attic of my house, which is for me a museum of sorts, to the models that I built and flew for, well, probably my whole life would be a fair way to say it. And one of the things, if you notice on the models, is this airbrushing. This is all done, now people that ride motorcycles probably don't know. It's an ink line, then you hold a piece of paper there and you airbrush that on. Same thing down here, you would hold an IBM card there, just hit that with an airbrush. All of these, by the way, going back God knows how many years, all done with the same airbrush that I'm still using. So the point I'm trying to make here is, once you get a good quality airbrush like an IWATA, it's yours for life. It'll probably outlive you. Now, another thing an airbrush is just, it's a necessity almost, is like when you're doing shading and highlighting, like on the windows, these faux windows on the B25, there's no way I know you can do that with a spray gun. You really need an airbrush. And by the way, for people that don't know, this model here is carved mostly from balsa wood, and a lot of the parts are molded from carbon fiber, like the cowlings. A lot of it required mold making skills. We made the propellers. The propellers are solid carbon fiber. The Tiger Cat, the black model here, the fuselage is molded from carbon fiber. Might be, I'm sure it's still on video. Paul has put out probably 1,000 of those airplane videos out there. But anyway, this video is about airbrushing. And this is one of the techniques you can use. I don't know if you would ever use this on a motorcycle, but it's something, you have the ability to make things look three-dimensional. And all of this work, it's just one more thing you can do with an airbrush. And the neat thing about an airbrush, it's small, it's compact, you don't even really need a big compressor. You can use a smaller pancake compressor. Doesn't take up any room in your house. And very, very easy to use. And I'm going to try to explain some of the things I think are the easiest way to learn how to use it if you're new to this. Now, just as a point of reference, this is the model railroad that's in the attic of my house. And all of this shading was done. All of these windows were painted with an airbrush. All of the shading down here, this is all done with an airbrush. The tracks are painted. The rust on the tracks painted with an airbrush. An awful lot of this, the scenery is painted with an airbrush, and the detailing. And the point with an airbrush too is it's very, very easy to use. It's almost self-explanatory, but I'll try to share some of the things I think will be of value. Now, there's one other consideration, and because this is about airbrushing, on a model airplane, especially these types, the weight is very important. So putting on extra paint is really something you don't want to do. Now, when you paint a motorcycle, it's got even a better benefit, is instead of using big, thick, giant coats of paint, you can put on a nice even coat like I did with the wheels. And the weight is not the issue, but the issue is it's just a lot easier to buff it out at the end. In fact, those wheels on that FZR, they were buffed by hand, and those videos again are on the channel. I guess about a month ago we posted that. So we're coming up on the end of, the FZR restoration soon. We're still waiting for a muffler. We still have a couple other little parts we want to work on. In fact, one of them came in the mail today, and I'll open that box on the next video. But airbrushing. Airbrushing, to me, our friend Scott in Colorado, he showed some interest in learning how to airbrush, and he has expressed the idea that maybe he's going to take a ride on his motorcycle from Colorado here this summer. That'd be pretty cool. And I can teach him how to airbrush in a half an hour. There's really nothing to teach. It's really a lot easier than you think. So to start off our little, what I'll call a demo, and basically there's not much not to like. This is an IWATA, a real spray gun. This is one Will Nomura donated to our cause. I've used it many, many years, and it's certainly good. In no way would I say this is not better or worse than an airbrush. But an airbrush can do things that this gun, if it could do it, it's very difficult to do it. And so I want to concentrate on just using the airbrush. Now, you buy an airbrush. The thing is, with an IWATA airbrush, it's a good quality. It's a lifetime investment. It's not like buying some of the less expensive tools that we use in the shop all the time. This has lasted me since Will gave it to me, and that's a long time. Now, the number one thing to remember, if it all makes sense, there's priorities to everything. Number one is an airbrush is a very delicate thing. If you take it apart, there's a long needle in here, and it's very, very closely machined. But in reality, it'll never wear out. The only thing you could do to hurt it is not clean it properly, and then at that point in time, good luck, you never know what's going to happen, or that you're going to have to replace parts. So you pretty much have an adjustment out here to fan it out, make different spray patterns, kind of self-explanatory. You have an adjustment at the back that pulls the needle further out and further in. And if you watch what happens, when you press this down, it lets air go through the gun. As you push this back, it pulls the needle out and allows paint to go out. So what happens, it's like flying a helicopter. There's two controls happening at the same time. You're adding air and adding paint. Adding air, press down, add paint, pull back. And the simplest thing of all, the easiest thing, because it uses so little paint, just go buy a can of any color. Black is a good color to start with. Go get some black paint. If you're using Brodak dope, thin it 50-50 with Brodak thinner, you're done. What happens with this, and I'm going to do a real live demo with it, what happens is, if you mix the paint 50-50, you're in the ballpark now. If it's colder out or warmer, you might want to adjust it 60-40, but you're never going to want to have 2/3 thinner. So you're always going to be about that midpoint, especially with modern urethane paints, even Brodak dope. A little more thinner, a little less thinner, but that is going to be decided by your shop conditions. So here's the thing that I think everybody should do. You go and buy, if you do buy an IWATA, and I hope Will Nomura's sales go through the roof here. Here's the whole thing in a nutshell, is practice with it. Enjoy practicing with it. It's easy to do. By the time you spray a pint of paint with an airbrush, you'll be an expert. Keep it clean. Keep the lid on tight. Now, a lot of people, including myself, do this. This is a big thing you got to be aware of. Let's say you put 30 pounds of pressure, 25 pounds, whatever it is, and you want to clean a gun. You've cleaned out the paint, you run the thinner, and I'm going to show that in real time. Then what happens is, you have the lid on this, you press the air, press the paint, all the way back and all the way down. And to clean the gun, you start doing this, which is how I always clean it. And what happens with an airbrush, this is going to fly off and hit you in the face. And it's hit me in the face, or it's taken, because it still has paint on it, and made me Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or whatever. So these are the things to get across. It's an easy tool to use. It's for all purposes, I would guess, anybody that's ever been in the shop, modeler or motorcyclist, in a half an hour they're painting 90% good, and then that last 10% may take 50 years. But you're painting good enough, and I want to do a real live demo right now. Now, in the interest of passing on useful information, I've found that some people that are using water-based paint, Karen has used it, of course, in her art classes. The rules may be a lot different. This really just applies to modern urethane paint. This is actually the exact paint. In fact, if you look at the lid, I always write on what I use this paint for, even though I have hundreds of jars of paint laying around here. The paint is mixed 50-50 with mid-temp thinner, the most common thing. Any body shop supply would sell you a pint of paint and a quart of mid-temp thinner, and the brand is not real critical. And you want to paint something. So here you have your airbrush. You put the paint in. If you've cleaned it well, you've done a good job cleaning it, and I always keep a paper towel in my hand so I don't drip it on my shoes and whatnot. What you'll notice, it sprays right away. Now, if it doesn't spray right away, you know you've got paint clogging the tip, more than likely, almost guaranteed, in fact. So here's the best thing to do. You bought a brand new airbrush. There's nothing trick about this at all. You need something to paint. You need to paint, mix it 50-50. That's not going to be hard. And you'll be close enough in the ballpark, you won't have to worry that it's not ever going to work. This is a good thing to try. A pickle jar. This is what we use. Spray a little and just look at the pattern. Now, if you look at the pattern and you see it feathers out on all edges real nice, you're probably really, really close. You put a second coat on, yeah, it's feathering out real nice. You can look from inside the pickle jar even. Now, a technique I use when I'm using an airbrush, I start the airbrush off the part. And you can see it feathers right in. The downside of using an airbrush instead of a big heavy spray gun, you need to fill this cup more often. But it's a small price to pay because the time you spend doing this, as opposed to how much time you're going to save later on that motorcycle wheel when you have to polish the spokes by hand and they have orange peel. It's not even close. Now, here's the trick you can do. I'm just trying to show little things I learned along the way. You can take a light bulb, is a good thing to practice on, and just try to put dots on a light bulb. See what I'm doing? Just put a dot. That allows you to get, it's like a little practice thing. Now, if you look at this, and I always keep this grounded here, what you see is it's dark and it feathers out like a sunburst. Now you know you're real close. This is going to be very easy to go from this point on. Now, as an example, if Scott were here, I would say, and you've never used an airbrush, never. This is the only thing you could have that would be an adjustment right now. You could back the needle out so more paint would flow. You could push the needle in so you couldn't get a run. But basically, the material that's coming out of here is going to be so close. The only thing you can do wrong, this is how you make a mistake with an airbrush, because an airbrush is not a paint gun. So what's going to happen, it's not going to cover in one coat. Watch what happens. If I do that, I'm going to get a run. This is the way you should do it. Let me get a clean part of this. Put a light coat on, just so you see it's covering. Let it dry 5 minutes, 2 minutes. If you're in a warm weather climate, it'll be dry in 30 seconds because there's very little material going on here. If you're in New Jersey, you may have to go have a cup of coffee. But just do that. Now, you graduate from that to the very easy thing of taking some old light bulbs, anything, and you can look at the spray pattern. And you're going to be real close. And if you're not, there's a good way to do it. It's like jetting a two-stroke. Back the nozzle out, turn the nozzle in. Either way, you could fan it more or fan it less. That's up to you. But you'll be so close in the beginning. And now, once this is dry a little bit, let's take this part here just as an example. Now, once it's dry, I can put that wet coat on. And once you've had this little lesson, it's really not that big. It's not that complicated. It's not a big deal. It's easy to do. Now you can go to the next step. The next step on our little demo here, this is not rocket science. And you should never be afraid to just take, this is an old stop sign or whatever. Mark Morgan brought these over. Danger, whatever the danger is, like anymore. watch for falling bodies of material. Anyway, this is what's a good idea. You buy your IWATA gun, you get some paint, and find something to paint. And the only way you learn is by painting. You know what? My wife loves to cook. I don't cook at all. So I try to avoid cooking, so I pretend I don't know anything. And it works. But I do know how to boil water. So here's the thing. That if you like to cook, buy a bunch of stuff to cook, screw some of it up, make some delicious, and throw away what you wasted. But in this case, you're wasting very little. And if I just take this, I don't want to go painting a complex part. Something flat is good. Practice the strokes going back and forth. What typically works well with an airbrush is let that dry, and for saving space, I'm just going to go to the next step. Then paint the next coat. 90 degrees, we're out of paint. See, now I got to fill this up. And the next coat, side to side, and the next coat. So you have 4 coats. Up, down, corner, corner. And then that would cover, and if you watch the wheel painting videos, what you find out, I was just doing it randomly, but I was trying to always move, so I was never doing the same. I don't want to just do zebra stripes. It's called zebra striping. I want to try to make checkerboards and then checkerboards the other way. And the good news with the airbrush, you can't really screw things up. And if you do, nothing bad happened. You can, if this was terrible, I don't have a paper towel in my pocket, but what you could do, just take a paper towel with acetone and wipe it off and do it again. So you're done playing, you're done with your little lesson or whatever. This is really, really easy. Take the cap off. Cap you can clean separate. That's not important. You take, and this is dirty thinner that has spray gun parts in it, and I put it in there, get my eyes away from it, and just hold the trigger down for a few seconds. If you're spraying anything clear, it's probably a better idea to just use clean acetone. Acetone seems to work fine. Other people prefer lacquer thinner. Slow drying lacquer thinner is probably the best. And they do make gun cleaning thinner that probably works just as good too. But anyway, here's the whole thing at the end. Scoop up some of that thinner, even if it's dirty thinner. Just let it spray out. Now, this is the thing I said don't do. I wanted to demo this because I've done this so many times too. If you're holding this down, and if you don't know that's going to happen, you go ah, and it goes right in your eyes. So anyway. This is all basic information. There is no part of this that, see, it's different than if you're learning to be a mechanic and you want to take the crankshaft out of your Hayabusa or something. Yeah, you could damage, you can have a problem, you can ruin parts, you can strip bolts. When you have an airbrush, there's no part of it that's dangerous except that cap blowing off. Let it run some air through there. In my case, I take a paper towel, it's got a little thinner just to be sure. I want the most important thing that I haven't left any pigmented paint in here, because the next time I may want to paint white, I don't want to have it turn into gray. Kind of just for my own, make it look like I know what I'm doing. Wipe this down. And now, I don't even have spare parts for this. They don't wear out. And if I can't wear them out, I guarantee you can't wear them out. I've done a lot of painting in the time I've been interested in painting things. Model planes, guitars, even painted race Straub's outboard engine. Oh, God knows what else. Anyway, the whole point is this is all simple, basic information. The IWATA airbrush, as well as the IWATA guns, which I still have and will. Believe me. We have, these guns have a lot of paint have gone through them. So anyway, that's a lot of good basic information. So on our video channel, the last thing we painted was this set of mirrors and buffed out. The videos are the ones just before this on the FZR restoration. The wheels are on there. That's another good example of stuff. But one of the things, and this is another, I just figured this is good information to put on an airbrush video. One of the advantages of using an airbrush, you have less thinner because the paint goes on drier. You don't have as much thinner penetration. So on parts like this that are plastic, they tend not to melt the plastic like you would if you took a full-size spray gun and put a wet coat on, a lot of the thinner would go down in and tend to melt the plastic and make extra work for you sanding out primer and everything. The airbrush does a great job. The downside, if you put it on too dry, you're not going to get any chemical adhesion. So there's a reason is just go get some light bulbs and some jars or something you can paint, you know, and practice, practice, practice. There is no reason. It's going to be easy to do. It's safe. Do it outside if possible so you don't get any smell in the house. And it's a good idea. I like to wear gloves. I just don't like to look like the Wizard of Oz paint man when I'm done at the end of the day. But anyway, and practice. And if you really want to go to the next level, once you've airbrushed it out and put on some clear, try the method I showed on a couple of previous videos of buffing out the clear. And you can turn pretty much your model plane, your motorcycle, your outboard engine cover, the wheels on your car. I mean, just thinking of things, you know, and if you're, or something creative that I haven't even thought of yet. But anyway, I tried to share that information, and it's simple information. It's not like you need a blackboard with formulas like you're going to send a rocket to the moon. This is simple stuff. Go out and practice, and all I can say is you will get better very quickly. But you'll probably be pretty good right in the beginning. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and Will, thank you very much. Will Nomura. I've used this stuff, and I've had nothing but good results. It's uncanny. I'm sorry I forgot your name. That's on me. But we'll try to make up for it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Share the information. Airbrushing is a lot of fun, and it's a very useful skill to have. So thanks for watching.